There's a story from ancient times that the mystics of Egypt had all the knowledge of the universe accessible to them. And there's a story from medieval times that the powers that be sought to change history and sought to overwrite what humans knew and to plunge us into a dark age. And both of these things are true. Now, to talk about what the Philosopher's Stone is requires basically a grade school math understanding and something that is more principled than it is literal. And that idea is that the universe is not what you think it is. It is not objective. It is not viewed through the lens of mechanics. It is not mechanical. It is not rational. But it's something different at its core. And this can be seen through math. I don't need to convince you of something. I can prove it to you. I don't need to have you go out on a limb and take a theory that is, oh, it's just my personal experience. I don't need to do that. I can show you. There's an object, a structure, that has been referred to as fundamental by every mystical community since the beginning of time. Every shaman could tell you this, every culture, every ritual, every universal language could tell you this, and that is the sphere, the circle. And has been revered since the beginning of time as a sacred shape. When you see the Philosopher's Stone depicted in almost every rendition of it, and I don't mean modern depictions because people have reimagined as if they have some wisdom, some authority to reimagine these things, and this is always how it goes. People who are charlatans and fools think that they have the right to reimagine wisdom. Reimagine it. Just make it up. And they imagine it as something different. But if you look far enough back in time, every depiction of the Philosopher's Stone depicted it as a perfect sphere. Something you could hold in your hand. And there's a reason for this. Because there's two symbolic things that are very important to the idea of a sphere, of something that is held in your hand. The first one is not obvious. It's mathematical. It is the diameter of a sphere and its circumference and the relationship between the two. And we call this pi. Pi. It's a mathematical thing. You probably learned about it in grade school. And it's well known that pi is an irrational number. Irrational. Let me say that again. Pi is an irrational number. What the fuck does it mean for something to be an irrational number? Now, if you're a deterministic type of person, or someone who believes that the universe operates by a defined logic, and that we are only merely decades away from finding the theory of everything, or perhaps you have your own theory of everything that you've cracked up, I have some sorely disappointing and bad news for you. It turns out that the idea of an irrational number existing at all inside of a rational universe is quite antithetical. You see, you would not find in nature as its core structure, which we do, irrational numbers. There are quite a number of them. You can look them up. But pi is the core one. Pi is the renowned and sacred shape, the circle that everyone has, depicted since the beginning of time as being magical or special. It shows up in sacred geometry, in the flower of life. It shows up in the structure of buildings and the ratios. It shows up in sigils and other magical practices. It shows up everywhere. It is renowned. It is in the ancient structures, whether it be the pyramids or Stonehenge or any of the other ringed about, even in the idea of the campfire, where you light a fire and everyone rings it about with a campsite. It's integrated in everything. And it's defined by one simple thing, and that is the distance between 2 points in an orbital fashion. It's the structure of the universe. And surprisingly, no one has made the connection, even though it's obvious, even though it's put forward in the most plain language. The idea that a perfect shape, one that actually contains an irrational number, not a approximate shape. You see, if I was to sit here with a piece of wood and carve out a perfect sphere and then measure it, I'd find a rational number because my hands are not perfect. I cannot craft out of wood a perfect thing. In fact, no matter how precise your instrumentation, no matter how precise your lathe or your tools of operation, you will always craft a rational thing. If you try and create a perfect sphere, even the inconsistencies of the atoms and the texture of the wood and the limitations of the material will produce a rational number when you measure it. And so, the perfect shape, the perfect circle, the perfect sphere has always been somewhat unobtainable. Yet, it exists. And it exists in something we call light. You see, in ancient Egypt, they worshipped the sun. But they didn't just worship the sun. Specifically, they worship the light of the sun. And when you examine light on a subatomic, a subatomic scale, when you examine light at its most fundamental level, what you find is a perfect sphere. A perfect sphere which is by nature, not by crafting a man, not by physical alignment or something, but by its own nature is perfect. And in some strange way, it doesn't seem to care about the laws of physics. It doesn't seem to care about time. It is perfect. And the Egyptians, they didn't just worship the sun. No, they worshiped the light of the sun. I want you to think about that. This is an obvious thing. It's right there out in the open. No one has to connect the dots for you. The rationality of pi and how it's built into the universe itself. Not to mention that in every ancient culture that had some mystical practice, there's the concept of the light body or the soul. Understand that these two things are linked. You must understand that light, that the perfect sphere, that the unending trail of numbers that is pi, the unending sequence of numbers, the incalculable. And I hate to break it to you, but for everyone who thinks that the universe is a simulation, I have to tell you, you're wrong. There's no computer out there that can calculate an infinite number of digits every moment of existence. It's infinite. That's why it's irrational. It's infinite and non-repeating. If it was repeating, you could do it. And it is light. And we use light to measure the universe. We point telescopes and we collect light of different spectrums. And we look at the farthest reaches of the universe and we measure it and we know it. We know it precisely in an undeniable fashion. We can measure it with enormous precision. And yet, we are measuring something that operates by the rules of infinity. We are measuring the perfect sphere. We are measuring pi. We are doing calculations in sine waves. This is fundamentally pi. It is irrational. It's an irrational number. And there are many irrational things about the universe. Black holes are irrational. Light is irrational. Pi is irrational. Consciousness is irrational. All the things that we see as unexplainable in the universe, we don't have a theory for them, are irrational. And so the universe itself is irrational. This is the nature of reality. It is orderly, and it is orderly because the purpose of it being orderly is to reduce suffering. And I can rant for a very long time about that, and I suppose later I will. But the universe is irrational. And when it comes to the philosopher's stone and people's opinions of it, they say, oh, they were after the philosopher's stone so that they could turn lead into gold. That's a lie. That's a lie. It had never had anything to do with that. The Egyptians understood this. The Greeks with their Platonic solids understood this. The alchemists of the Middle Ages understood this. And yet, why? Why is it that us, of the modern age, have completely reduced their understanding to, oh, they just wanted gold. They were greedy. They were charlatans. They were selfish. No, the fuck they weren't. They understood something about the universe you don't. They had a mystical understanding of perfection that you don't. That modern society doesn't. Why is this not obvious? I don't understand why it's not obvious. I suppose in order to come to some sort of conclusion, I'd have to assume that perhaps there's a secret there, lying in plain sight, that people in power, or authoritarians of their time, since I don't remember the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages being particularly open societies until the Renaissance happened. And even Galileo was hunted by the church. They wanted to kill him or put him behind bars or shut him up in some way. Because, it turns out Earth is not the center of the universe. But these 2 points remain. That the universe is actually irrational. That a theory of everything is actually out of reach. That it's not a simulation and that it's not deterministic. That you can't control it. In order to control it, you'd have to be able to calculate an infinite, non-repeating sequence called pi. And that the philosopher's stone has been, and always has been, depicted as a sphere. An finite object which you can hold in your hand, which contains inside of it an infinite relationship. Let me say that again. A perfect sphere is a finite object, smaller than you can conceive. It is light. Light. And it contains in it a ratio, a relationship between its circumference and its diameter. that is infinite and non-repeating, and it will never end, and you cannot calculate it. It is irrational. And that is built into the nature of reality. Math is supposed to tell us the structure of reality. It's supposed to represent it. But it does not pierce the veil to go to the true nature. But when you find something in math, a quirk, an infinite sequence, non-repeating, that goes on forever, that is irrational, it's undeniable. And yet, no one cares, it seems. No one pays attention to this. No one knows. It's a secret, an open secret. And boy, people have really missed this one, and I don't know why. But I think it's obvious. I don't know why no one cares. I don't know why no one talks about it. And to be perfectly honest, I'm far enough along my path that I really don't care to hear what people's opinions are. I don't care to debate it. I don't care to sit there and question. The facts are obvious. They are in front of you. You are conscious. Black holes exist. Rational numbers exist. Reality is unknown. But people don't like to think about that. It scares them or something. But to me, it is a beautiful and wondrous thing, and I'm just sad that it seems like no one else cares. I wouldn't be too negative because I think people know on some level. I think that they haven't quite put it to words, which is why I'm talking about it.